Hello and welcome to the latest Science of Sport podcast. I'm your host Matt Solomon, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Daniel Booth. So Daniel is the head of performance at Watford Women's Football Club. He's also the founder of the Lab Performance, which consults teams and coaches all around the world. Daniel's career path has not been traditional in terms of education, and he's here today to discuss how you can get through to the top of elite sport without having to have a PhD. So without further ado, it's time to welcome him onto the show. So Daniel, welcome to the Science of Sport podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks very much for having me. Appreciate the time.
Oh, absolutely, mate. Thank you for joining us. So can you give us a quick introduction as to who you are and what you've been up to until now?
Yeah, so I'm Daniel Booth. I'm currently the head of performance for Watford Women's Football Club. I've got over a decade in elite sport, working with numerous extremely talented coaches, and started out as a very humble PT.
How did you then make the step to get to where you are now then? Because obviously there's going to be some people probably in similar positions you think, oh, that's pretty good. But
yeah, so I'll give you the short version of the story. So left school, had zero idea what I wanted to do, but sport and science was always a big passion area of mine. So went to college, did BTEC in sports science. At the same time, studied externally to get my PT qualifications. And then from there, I just went into fitness first. Got friendly with a local general manager, and he was an idiot, and he employed me and let me have a crack at it. And I mean, I was in a wealthy area, so it was a lot of yummy mummies who didn't really want to train; they just wanted to have a chat, have a coffee, that sort of thing. Did that for a couple of years. Didn't really enjoy it. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be on multiple levels. And so had a complete career change. Actually ended up working in PR for a little while in sports and fashion and that sort of thing. And that was good crack. But that sort of nagging passion for training was always there. I was always training myself, and I was very lucky to work with some very, very high profile sportsmen and sportswomen. And I always used to joke that, we worked with like Premiership rugby players, and I always joke that I could squat more than them and all that sort of thing. And I mean, at the time, I think I was about 9.5 stone. So I was a weed. But some of the England boys that we represented at the time were like, come on then, come with us. Gave one or two of them a couple of coaching tips. And it just sort of, from there, they then started saying, oh, we trained with this guy and he was a good laugh and he actually helped us a little bit. And so started picking up individual athlete clients whilst I was working full time. And then decided, hey, now I'm a little bit older, I'm a little bit more mature, I understand the industry, I understand what people are looking for and what is required of people. So let me dig a little bit deeper into this. So then from there, studied my strength and conditioning qualifications externally, and did a whole host of other qualifications at the same time. So nutrition for performance. I did a foundation degree in psychology for high performance environments. I did exos courses. I think I've done just about every exos course there is, to just up my level of knowledge, and to provide a better service for the athletes that I was working with. And then that all goes hand in hand with, extracurricular reading and all that sort of stuff. And then I just started knocking on doors. Got very, very lucky. A couple of coaches said, yep, why not come in? Started working at a private school. That was great fun. Really, really good fun. And for me, I think it's, for any S&C coach, it's a solid foundation. Because if you can control a room full of 45 boys that are aged anywhere from 14 to 17, and they listen to you, you'll have no problem in the elite space because they are exactly the same. So yeah, and then just sort of worked my way up from there. And more recently ended up working with the track coach, Steve Fudge, who, I mean, I would class him as a mentor and a friend. And that experience working with him and being a part of that team expanded my knowledge base beyond belief. The way that he thinks, the way that he processes things, just opened me up to a completely different way of training and thinking about training and thinking about athletes. And then I did a very short stint with Ealing Trailfinders and their Pathway Academy with the local colleges. So I worked specifically with Henley College, and then ended up in my role at Watford Football Club.
Actually, excellent. Now that kind of plays nicely into the topic today as well, right? So obviously you've got some people who come through a path like yours where it's a lot of experience, a lot of doing, and then you've upskilled yourself along the way. And there's people who do the degree, master's, PhD, and, I want to work in sport. So
yeah,
why have we got to a stage where on job adverts and job application, all that kind of stuff, where people are asking for PhDs? Why have we got that far? Why are coaches then overeducated?
So I think as being in a head of department role at the minute, I think a lot of it, unfortunately, is copy and paste. I believe that, very few people are capable of thinking for themselves, and it's a case of what are our competitors doing? That's what we need. So, for instance, we've got Arsenal next door. Arsenal are a fantastic setup across the board, highly medically focused in everything they do. And so because of that, the minimum requirements are extremely high. So you've got to have a master's degree, you've got to have 5 years experience, all this sort of stuff. But just because that's the right thing for Arsenal doesn't necessarily means it's the right thing for Chelsea or Watford or Spurs or any other team out there. And I think, unfortunately, what people get in the habit of doing is going, well, we want to be Arsenal, so we'll just copy and paste their job adverts and not really think about what we actually need as a department and as a team. And then, hopefully we'll find the same sort of people that they get to employ. But actually, there's a lot of nuance that goes into, the job descriptions that they write and the people that they look for. And, getting a job with Arsenal is a 5-6 stage process, and it entails meeting multiple different people. So I think it's laziness, if I'm quite honest, a lot of the time. And it's just copycatting as well. And I think that has then bred into this trend, and I call it a trend because I personally believe that's what it is. This trend of people needing master's degrees, PhDs. I know yourself. You've got a master's in research. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So what made you do that? What made you take that step?
At the time, my thought process was I don't have a job lined up, and a master's will give me a better chance at that. So I did some research for football, and that, in fairness, it gave me a better chance when I did try and get a job. Because I'd already done some stuff in football. They were like, "Oh, you've done some stuff in football." Doesn't mean that it gave me a skill set which was actually applicable, but it gave me potentially a little extra boost in the door.
But do you think have you actually used what you studied in that master's?
Not the content, no. The critical analysis, I think that does come in useful. You could have picked up at degree level, but. No, I think the content itself. We're doing stuff like biochemistry and yes, brilliant if you know all those pathways, but I do not care about that now. Not in the slightest.
But that sums it up. It's you've got a lot of young people that are coming out from doing their degrees and going, well, what's going to set me apart from the rest of the world trying to get in? Because I've done a sports science degree just like 90,000 other people who want to get into sport and think that's the route to do it. And it's like, okay, I'm now going to go on and study a master's that those 90,000 people are also going to go and study. And it's like, okay, well, the next step there is to go and study a PhD. And it's like, well, 50,000 of those people are also studying a PhD. And it no longer sets you apart. You just become part of the trend. And I think a lot of people are stuck in the fact that, through laziness, the entry requirements to get into professional sport are so high, versus, them needing experience, but can't get that experience because you need 2 years experience and a master's degree.
And I'm rudely interrupting to make sure you're up to date and aware of the Science of Sport Coach Academy. The Coach Academy is an overgrowing library of sports science courses, which is broken down into bite-sized chunks. So, if you're enjoying today's podcast and you want to get your hands on some more great sports science information, all you have to do is hit the link in the show notes and get in there completely for free for the next 7 days. So hit that link when the podcast is finished.
Obviously, yeah, I completely understand your point. Like PhDs is unnecessarily specific for the majority of S&C or sports science roles. But what skills do people then need? Because obviously it's easy to say, right, you don't need your PhD, way too specific, you get way too in-depth in one area and you're not applied anymore. But obviously there's something that they do need to be able to get those roles. So what is that?
You need to know people, first and foremost. I have never, and I'm going to be honest and completely put this out there, I have never, ever, ever interviewed for a role. It's always been via referral and people that I know and people who know people. It's just the way it is. So network, as much as people hate doing it and as much as you don't want to be that guy or girl, you've got to network. You've got to get to know people in the industry. But also just focus on your craft. So because of the rise of all these PhDs and master's degrees and that sort of thing, people have lost the fact that coaching is a craft. I've been a part of teams where the performance staff and the medical staff have actually looked down on the technical coaches because they're just technical coaches. Oh, the head coach doesn't know what we do. They just coach. They just manage the players. There is so much more that goes into it than that. And I think that's where the translation is getting lost. It's like, no, that's the stuff that you should be focused on. It's, it's the environmental dynamics, it's social dynamics, being basic things like being personable to get somebody to trust you and build a relationship with you. Steve Fudge said to me when I first joined his group that, he'd not seen anybody build a relationship with his athletes as quickly as I had. But it was because I was myself. There was no airs and graces. It was a case of, I'm here, I'm a professional, I'm here to do my job. But you can trust me and you have to trust me to allow me to do my job. And I think that's what people just forget. You have to be a human at the end of the day. I have met so many people in so many interviews that are robots. And they've just come straight off the factory floor. There's no personality. There's no humour. I mean, I am the most informal person in interviews, and I will crack jokes and this sort of thing. People just sat there like, I don't know if you're joking. I don't know if I just take you seriously. And it's like, I want to see you. I want to see who you are as a person. I don't care about the bits of paper because anybody can get a bit of paper nowadays. I mean, one of my friends, I hope he won't mind me saying this, but he went to university to study how to play the drums. And then he went to university again to study outdoor leadership, which is essentially what you learn in Scouts. It's how to build fires, it's camping, it's all this sort of stuff. Like, you can't use that in the real world. You've wasted 3 years going to university to study something that, I learned when I was 8 at Scouts. And so people need to focus on those key human aspects, being personable, being open-minded, being really, really curious and wanting to first and foremost deliver a service to the athletes that we're looking after, because that's what people forget is we're there to deliver a service. We're not there to be their friends. We're not there to make ourselves look good to our family or friends. I know there are people out there that is an aspect to it, but they want the cool job and the cool job title. But we are there to deliver a service. And if you aren't delivering that service, then what are you doing? So I think it's stripping everything back to basics, really focusing on your coaching craft. And that's all the social dynamic aspects, but also to just deliver a session. I've seen far too many people that have got degrees up to the eyeballs, but you stick them in front of the 3 people in a gym and say, right, deliver that session. They go, I don't know what to do. Okay, we'll deliver a basic warm up. Oh, well, research stipulates. I don't care about research. Like, warm these guys and girls up for me. You've got 15 minutes to do it. And they panic. Absolutely panic. And it's the university courses aren't preparing them for real world sport, regardless of elite sport, just sport in general. So yeah, I think it's hopefully I've answered that question without going off on too much of a tangent.
I think it's super interesting. Like, so what I'm interested to hear then is how people go about developing these skills, because obviously let's say you compare it to a PhD, you're going to spend 3 or 4 plus years doing loads of research, high level stuff, really difficult, loads of time and effort invested. But the flip side of that is you could spend that time and effort in investing in all of the great things you just mentioned. So assuming that you're willing to give the same amount of time and effort to both options, how would people go about developing the skills you just mentioned as opposed to going down the academic route?
Yeah, so I think, nowadays we're extremely lucky with the amount of outlets that there are that you can go and study and do different courses and all that sort of thing. So I think first and foremost is get those foundational qualifications that you need. If you want to be an S&C coach, go and get your S&C qualifications. You can get them through multiple different companies. Some are better than others. The course content is obviously better than others. And then from there, figure out what your weak spots are. So, or not necessarily weak spots, but what your interests are. So for me, it's a big part of the way that I coach is about psychology and social dynamics and, how groups of people work together and, social hierarchy and all that sort of stuff, because that's come from working within schools. You give me a class full of 25 kids. Within the first couple of minutes, I can tell you who's the good kid, who's going to do exactly as they're told, never question anything. And then the little brat who, he thinks he's a bit of a Jack the Lad, likes a laugh and will cause you absolute hell if you let him get away with it. But the key is, and this is what most people don't understand, including a lot of teachers, unfortunately, nowadays, is that if you get those 2 kids on side, the rest will follow. And working in team sports and working with groups of athletes in general, it's the same principle. There are leaders, there are followers, there are good kids, there are bad kids. And it's learning to hone those skills. And that's what the psychology side of it allowed me to do, as well as having a natural instinct for it. And I think that plays into it also a lot, is naturally what you're very good at. But yeah, get those base foundational courses done. The next step for me would be expose yourself to as many different environments as possible. So the one thing I hate about sport is that I'm a football person, I'm a rugby person, I'm a motorsport person, I'm a horse racing. Like, it's very narrow-minded. The vision is so direct because everybody wants to be a specialist. I'm quite happy, hand on heart, I'm not a specialist in anything. I'm a generalist. I am a jack of all trades, master of none. And I'm very proud to say that, because in a world of specialists, generalists stand out. And you can offer a bigger scope and a bigger picture to things, and different ways of doing things. So I came into football, for instance, with an athletics and a rugby background. Took one look at the warm-ups and went, no, we're going to completely change it. And people are like, oh, no, research dictates, and there's this paper that specifically for football, and I've worked in football for 10 years and this is never how we've done it before. And it's like, that's great, but try something new and you might get a better end result. You might get a worse end result, but you might get a better end result. So it would be expose yourself to as many different environments as possible and take the key things from those environments. Because if you go and spend a week with a golf coach and then you go and spend a week with a swim coach, but you work in rugby, you might think, well, I'm not going to learn anything that's applicable. I guarantee you will learn a handful of things. Not necessarily about, P's and Q's and, rep ranges and all that sort of stuff, but you will learn something about how to deal with athletes, the psychology of different people, how to talk. Like, you might end up working with Michael Phelps for a week. Do you know what I mean? Or you might go and work with Tiger Woods for a week. Those guys think very, very differently and act and hold themselves accountable in a very different way to, your average football player or your average rugby player. So it's exposing yourself to those environments that will give you a completely new level of understanding. And then from there, have a coach or have a mentor. So one thing that I have external to my everyday work is I have my own company called Land Performance that has evolved from a one-to-one athlete coaching business to coaching coaches and coaching head coaches and heads of department on all these different areas that, a high performance coach in rowing might have spent the last 25 years in rowing and they go to the Olympics every year and they just miss the cut. I come in with a varied experience, shall we say, and I can offer knowledge or insight into different ways of doing things. But a lot of the time, it's literally just acting as a second pair of eyes. And that's what we call the offering. We don't call it mentorship. We don't call it coaching. It's a second set of eyes. We work with people to understand their day-to-day and the things that they're missing socially, physically, data-wise, and that is such a key thing because nobody knows it all, and it's very easy for people going back to the PhD thing to go, oh yeah, I know everything about this specific subject. Great, but can you put it into practice? Because I can guarantee when you put it into practice, you will miss 5 or 6 physical cues or social cues because you're so worried about the data and what the theory is saying. And, I've worked with coaches recently, a couple of clients of ours work head coaches in the AFL, and they've come and been like, I've got problem players, I've got problem staff, I don't know how to deal with it. They're Aussies, they're very cut and dry. It's like, nah, I'm not dealing with that. What a load of nonsense, blah, 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 blah. And it's basically breaking down scenarios and helping them understand the dynamics that are involved. And it's a case of, you might come to me and go, oh, I had an awful conversation with one of my coaches today. I shouted and screamed and acted completely inappropriately because they forgot to send out the wellness forms to the player today. And it's like, okay, it's not a big deal. Explain the situation to me. How could you have handled it better? And we will break situations down like that, minute for minute. And a lot of the coaches, especially the guys that work in the AFL that I work with, they keep a journal. So they write a journal all week, send it to me every day so I can review it. And then at the end of the week, we'll jump on the Zoom and we'll break down the entire week. The different scenarios, the different things that happened, how they were feeling, how they handled different situations. And a lot of them come back to me and say, it's really cathartic. And it's, they go away from that conversation seeing things so much clearer because they've had somebody go, well, you could have probably responded like this and you would have had this outcome. And we all need that. I mean, I'm very lucky. My wife is that for me. My wife has got no attachment to sport. She's got no interest in sport whatsoever. But I explain situations to her and she goes, Maybe you could have handled that a little bit differently. I'm like, how? How? It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. Well, what, you could have tried this. And actually, when somebody does that, you go, oh my God, I'm a complete idiot. I completely overreacted to that. So getting a coach or a mentor at any stage of your career, you could be a championship winning head coach. You still need that second set of eyes to allow you to take things to the next level. And that's what it's about. It's about elevating your knowledge, elevating yourself and your understanding of yourself. Because when you elevate the understanding of yourself, the world is your oyster. Because then you understand how the world affects you and how you affect it. And then just coaching hours. Get some coaching hours under your belt. Get face to face with people, and just do the job. Do the job. It's the one thing that I say to all these guys and girls that are studying their degrees at the moment. It's like, wow, what can I do to get in sport? Well, how many internships have you done? Well, none, because I don't want to work free. Tough. It's not fun. Nobody likes working for free. I hated it, but I did it for a year and a half. You know what I mean? And it's not right that it's part of the process. Everybody should be paid for their time, regardless of your knowledge and regardless of your experience. Unfortunately, reality is that if you want to work at the highest level, there is a certain payment that comes with that, and it is your time, probably for a good 12 to 15 months before somebody turns around and goes, do you know what? Now we'll give you 12 grand a year, and you'll be working 60 hours a week. So it's I think those for me are the 4 key steps that you've got to take that coaches need nowadays. And
really briefly, because I'm conscious of time, can you give us a rundown of what you think the perfect skill set is for a coach? Like a 60-second, like, I want this, and this.
Big picture thinker, personable, professional, curious, and the main one, and I've had to write these down because my mind is like a sieve. The big one for me that I've got underlined that I think has run through this entire conversation is socially intelligent. Because there are not many socially intelligent coaches out there. You want to be able to sit down or walk into a room and be able to read that room within seconds. Do I need to bring the energy up? Do I need to bring the energy down? I said that to a coach actually the other day that I was talking to, and I was like, walk into your warm up and you tell me within the first 30 seconds if the energy of the team needs to be brought up or brought down. He's like, well, why would I need to bring it down? I was like, because if they're overhyped and excited and, oh my God, there's a lot going on. And I was like, trying to wrangle them and get them into the warm up and get them focused for the session ahead. It's going to be chaos. And they was like, oh my God, yeah, God, you're so right. And it's just having that little thing. So those would be my key things.
Absolutely excellent. So Daniel, massive thanks for your time and effort today. It's been a pleasure talking. Where can people find a bit more about you and what you're up to?
Instagram, LinkedIn. My Instagram, I think, is Boothie_lab. My company, Lab Performance, also have a newsletter that you can sign up to, which is a free newsletter every Friday, that is basically a breakdown on key skills for being a better coach and a better leader. We've had really great pickup on it recently. So, sign up to that.
Excellent. Thank you very much, mate. And I look forward to speaking again soon.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.
And that's it. Once again, a massive thanks to Daniel for all of his hard work on today's podcast. I really appreciate it. I'm sure you do at home too. Before you leave, I want to point you in the direction of the Science Sport Coach Academy. Coach Academy is an overgrowing library of sports science courses broken down into bite-sized chunks. So if you've enjoyed today's podcast and you want to get your hands on some more great sports science information, all you have to do is hit the link in the show notes and you get in there completely for free for the next 7 days. What's more, every time you complete one of the courses, you get a certificate of completion which will prove your ongoing education. So hit that link in just a few minutes' time. And if you have enjoyed today's podcast, it'd be fantastic if you could recommend it to a coach, a colleague, an athlete, or a friend. That means that we can keep bringing you the best possible guests and best possible content. And that's it. Once again, a massive thanks from me. I'm Matt Solomon of Science Sport. See you next week.